I'm delighted to say I'm joined by the Sky Sports pundit, commentator and author, Wayne Mardle. How you doing, Wayne?
I'm all right, thanks, Leo. I'm good. I'm kind of relaxing in the sun right now, which is probably the best place to be.
Well, it's been a while since we last had you on. We took a trip down memory lane with you for our Darts Legend series. That was during the first lockdown. Since then, we've had a lot of darts behind closed doors, new winners. What have you made of how the last 12 months have played out in darts?
Yes, it's been a bit unpredictable, that's for sure. We're witnessing right now a definite swing. The youngsters, if you like, the Aspinalls, Vandenbergs, and the elder statesmen that have just hit the ground running, like the Sousa and Clayton, they fear no one, and the big hitters that we've been used to seeing for decades, if you like sort of Gary Anderson, Michael Van Gerwen, James Wade, and let's put Peter Wright in there as well. They're not dominant anymore. It's weird because it seems that Gedwin Price's stock has risen his absence of the Premier League. So, yes, peculiar one, really is. But it's good to see different winners. And on tour, we're seeing some people flourish and thrive, like call it Aaron Peeney, and we've seen others like Van Dyvenbode the last year really kind of come to the fore. So good luck to everyone that's used the lockdown, if you like, and the pandemic to a positive, because there's not many other positives going around, is there?
No, well, we added it up last week, the 3 Premier League nights we had last week. That took us up to 101 sessions of behind closed doors darts on TV put on by the PDC during this pandemic. As a former pro, how hard do you think it has been for the players to adjust to it?
Well, just me personally, this is only, I can only comment on how I would feel. The sterile environment of the Pro Tours absolutely finished me off. And I know that a lot of people don't like playing them. Like Gary Anderson's not a fan. Michael Van Gerwen plays them because he sees it as a means to an end of being top of every rankings pile. But they're played in these quiet environments that some players don't like. So it would only just translate to the stage as well. I'm amazed that the standard has been so good. I really am. I really am, because the adrenaline rush isn't there, and you have to create it yourself. And we see that with Michael Van Gerwen night in, night out, and Nathan Aspinall as well, and especially Gedwin Price at the Worlds, where you can see them kind of geeing themselves up, getting themselves going, because it's flat. So, look, they've done a brilliant job, the players and the PDC and Sky putting it on, but look, come May the 24th, we are back, and hopefully that's it, job done.
Fingers crossed for that. Well, you mentioned Sky. We've had some changes in the Sky team too. We should give a chance for you to say a few words on Dave Clarkey, who stepped away as presenter last summer. What memories stick out working with Clarkey?
It was a funny one, because I kind of knew Clarkey when I was a player, and we'd always kind of chat and what have you, but he was the face of darts. Let's be fair. You had Sid Waddell as the voice, and you had Dave Clark as the face. And I feel that Dave did exactly the right thing. As you know, he's got advanced Parkinson's, and he felt the time was right. And as long as he's happy, then that's all that matters. But he felt it was the right time to kind of just step away from being the presenter. We all support him in whatever he does. But what an absolute machine of a man. The way he just ploughs on, does these hikes, and they're not walks. He calls them like a walk across the Pennines. I did that walk. It was up mountain. It was like down ravines. It wasn't a walk. But look, things change all the time in life and in sort of TV production. And now we've got Emma Payton, who's stepping into Clarkey's shoes was never going to be simple, but she has made it look absolutely effortless, and she's a joy to work with. She educates herself every single day on the darts, and she as you know, she will throw to the commentators, and so it'll be over to Mark Webster and Wayne Mardle. But she'd have already set the game up so well, there's nothing for us to do. It's like, thanks, Emma. Thanks, Emma. the last 2 hours prep that I've just been doing are absolutely out the window because you're so thorough. I really appreciate that. But look, Clarkey, we've had some funny times. There was one where we was in an airport waiting to go to the World Cup in Hamburg, and the plane was delayed, or the flight was delayed by a couple of hours, so we got on the Guinness. Well, we were so involved in the Guinness that we nearly missed the delayed flight, and they called us out, so we had to run. Clarkey, in his drunken state when we were getting off the plane, went through all security and everything else and realised he'd left bag and clothes on the plane. So going back through security the other way is not that simple. But on the plus side of that, we bumped into Chris Rea, so it was all good. But yeah, we miss Clarkey so much. But like we said, he's happier now that he's not under pressure, fronting one of the most viewed sports on Sky Sports. So good luck to him, and I hope he's enjoying his time off.
Yeah, agreed with that. What a man Clarkey is, and agreed with you as well. Emma's doing a fantastic job as well. One last question about your work with Sky, and then we'll get into some of the darts. You're one of the best pundits in the business when it comes to darts, but we have seen Gary Anderson, Rob Cross the last few months in the press talking about something you said. Is that difficult to deal with, or do you brush it off because you are there to give your opinion?
No, I'm pretty good actually, because no one likes to be called a numpty, do they? Listen, or there was something else he called me. I can't remember what it was. It was obviously a Scottish thing. But look, the trouble is that these players have got to realise that my opinions are kind of based on fact. I don't just spout. People think I do, but I'm quite measured in what I'm going to say. I don't go on about Rob Cross's action just for the sake of going on about Rob Cross's action. I don't go on about people putting Gary off just for the sake of people putting Gary off. It's the fact that he said blatantly that I just want to play the game and I don't like being slowed down. Well, if you're a dart player, you've got to slow him down, because there's not many players in the world that are as good as him. I remember playing Robert Thornton in a World Championship match, and I actually said to him before the game, look, you're better than I am, mate. There's only one way I can beat you, and that's to put you off. If you do it within the rules, or you get told, then you stop. Simple as that. It's when rule breakers, it's when we've seen things over the years, and I ain't going to mention them personally. We've seen things over the years where it's gone too far, and that's not on. But until you get told to stop doing something and it's within the rules, then absolutely fine. But look, these players, Michael Van Gerwen was another one. He said it when he took out the 104 last week, and I was absolutely certain that he had me in mind. Because we go on about it all the time, the 48 route, the 16 and the tops. And he actually said, it's funny, I was thinking of Wayne during the game. What's all that about? Seriously, what's all that about? I don't even think of me. It's just amazing. Look, but these players, they've got their opinions too. I've got my opinion on them, and they've got their opinion on me. But I'm pretty good because I study them more than they probably study themselves. I know their games better than they know their own. And like I said, people think I spout because I talk a lot of nonsense, and that there's no doubt. But I'm there to entertain and inform on Sky Sports, and hopefully that's what comes across. And I love dissecting a throw. I love saying that this could be better, and a lot of the players listen, but those that want to kind of call me out. Look, the great thing, like I said earlier, is that I don't care. I don't, and I think sometimes you've got to have that thick skin. Obviously, not all the time it's there, because there's things that goes on in people's lives that make you kind of mentally weaker and fragile in areas. And last year for me was that it was an horrendous year, and things still go on, but people don't care what goes on behind the scenes. They just think that we're all tough, aren't we? Because we're in the public eye. Well, it doesn't work that way. But the players that get offended, look, I get it. Sometimes they can hack it, and like me, sometimes they can't.
Well, let's talk some Premier League then. Michael Van Gerwen is back on top of the table. We've got 2 of the 3 debutants. They're also in the top 4 at the minute. Dimitri Van den Berg, Jose de Souza, Johnny Clayton, very close to that top 4 as well. What have you made of the Premier League this year so far?
Well, like I've mentioned, the unpredictability of darts is astonishing. Night in, night out, you have no idea what you're going to get. And it's so tough to call those at the bottom, like where Gary Anderson was. All of a sudden he puts in 104 average, beats Peter Wright, who's in trouble. I'm not sure what's wrong with his shoulder, I've got to say. But Van Gerwen, from one night to the next, 107 average, 90, 109. It's so tough to call. But these debutants now, I remember in my day, they were coming in and out, and they were so nervous because it was huge. But they're all so set up now. The likes of Johnny Clayton and Van den Berg, they play the Van Gerwens and the Gary Andersons. They play them now so often that these games now on TV, yeah, they're big games, but they're not huge like they were back in the day. In my whole career, I played Phil Taylor, I think, over like 10 years, 27 times. I think Michael Van Gerwen's played him like the best for 60 or 70. That was in about 6 or 7 years. So they play them so often now, and that little bit of fear goes. But you look at Jose, Johnny, Dimitri and Nathan. Forget the age here, because they've hit the ground running at different moments. If that was the top 4, would that surprise me? No, it would not. No, it would not at all. They're quality, they're brilliant players, and Johnny at the moment is the only one averaging over a ton. We'd normally expect that from Gary and Michael.
Well, it's all set for an interesting final weekend. As we know, as we're coming through this pandemic, the Premier League is very different this year with the setup. We've got the 4 final nights, and then the following night we're going straight into the playoffs. How do you see that final week playing out?
Well, I think this is really interesting, because if you cast your mind back to last year, Glenn Durrant was kind of the main man in the league phase, and there was a bit of a gap in between the league phase and the finals night. And during that finals night, his form kind of tailed off, but he somehow managed to scrape through the semi-final and final with performances for him which were under par. They were below par. They weren't very good at all, but he managed to get it won. But I believe that someone can play themselves into form now for the last 2, 3, 4 nights and take that into the finals. And don't be surprised if someone comes out of the clouds. And when I say out of the clouds, I mean in terms of a league position. If someone just creeps in, I'm going to say like a James Wade or even a Gary Anderson, whilst it'll be kind of against the run of against the grain. Gary's been fighting kind of the bottom 2 or 3 for the duration, but a spurt now could see him qualifying 4th, and with that recent form going into what will be finals night, which will be Cup Collection Day, as I like to call it, don't rule out any of them. It's a fascinating one, because keeping up that form is difficult. Can Dimitri carry on the form for the duration of the Premier League? Johnny Clayton, Nathan Aspinall, can they carry it on? Because that's what now needs to be done, and it's really difficult. It's really difficult.
On to the more serious darts then, and this past weekend we saw you on the celebrity episode of that. I was trying to find that picture of you when you were on it younger. When you got the call to be involved in this one, how excited were you?
Well, it was an odd one, because they said, I thought it was going to be to throw the 9 darts, and if I'm totally honest now, I was quite apprehensive about going on it, because with lockdown and what keeps me going, what keeps me playing is exhibitions, corporate days, and especially coaching. As you know, I do that a lot, and where I've not been coaching, doing exhibitions and corporate days, I've hardly thrown a dart, and it shows. Do you know what? I couldn't relax, and Joe Cullen and Fallon will tell you the same. I think we had about I'm going to say 3 darts practice each in the 6 hours of that we were there. There was no light beverages at hand. There was, or like I call it, relaxation juice. There was none of that. It was so difficult. It was so difficult. And I was saying to Joe before I was throwing, I said, I can't hold them, Joe. I said, I can't hold them. And he went, yeah, I feel the same. And I'm thinking, is he just saying that to make me feel better? And then we watched Fallon throw, and I felt a bit better after watching her throw, I have to say. And as she kind of walked off the area of throwing back to us, I said, "You're right." She went, "I'm so nervous." It's Joe Cullen mentioned on the night comfort zones and the most nervous he's ever been. I have played and lost in 5 World Championship semi-finals, as you know. I've played in match play finals. I've played for England. I've never known anything like it. And what really kind of got to me was the fact that I knew I hadn't played for a year, and I knew that I was kind of struggling, going to struggle anyway. And the reason I packed up darts in the first instance, Lau, when I was 38, was because the pressure was becoming too much. And now I know why I packed up. It was the right decision. Pressure and me don't go together.
Well, I know the most important thing for that was the money race for charity, and all you guys managed to raise some great money, but I can't help thinking David Seaman shanking that dart in the bullseye in the first round proved to be the difference. You should have been in the final with Angela.
I know, we lost by 30, and this is fact as well. You've got to ask Joe Cullen this. In the very first going for the category board, he had a 75 on sport. He went for the bullseye. Of all the categories, he pushed it into the right category. How's your luck? Seriously, that and the bullseye, unbelievable.
I'm sure you'll get another go anyway. But one of the most popular questions we get on Twitter, aside from when is Burton going to come back, is, are you going to be in the World Seniors? Well, of course you're not at that age yet, but when you do get there, are you hoping to be involved?
Yeah, I want to be involved. If I could have, I'd have said yes if they'd have bent the rules this time round. But no, I'm of the believer that the first one sets the precedence. And if I'm honest, I'm surprised how many players they've got. I thought it was going to be 16 world champions, but they've gone down a different route, purely for income, I'm assuming. And I just hope it's a roaring success, because look, there's a lot of players out there that have still got a bit to give that don't play on the tour, and to have another 5 minutes in the sun, that'd be nice for them. I want to see Bob Anderson play. I really do. I want to see Phil get his competitive juices flowing, and we'll see how it pans out. But yeah, I want to be involved. I think it's a great idea.
Good to hear. Well, we should give a mention to your new book that's coming out very soon, Slinging Arrows, How Not to Be a Professional Darts Player. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, as the title kind of goes, How Not to Be a Professional Dart Player. It's a real candid look at my career, and as we know, the How Not to Be a Professional Dart Player is I've made mistakes. Of course, I've made mistakes. I took Kirk Shepherd far too lightly in 2008. I just thought I was in the final. I thought I'd beat Party as well, and that wasn't professional. And why wasn't I told that situation as well? So I kind of mentioned that. But it's a look at the transition from being a player to the player to pundit, if you will, retiring at the age of 38, when it kind of dawns on you that, do you know what, maybe I'm never going to win another game, and we talk about that, and it's a difficult conversation, because something you've done since the age of 10, you now realise that, do you know what, I've been good enough all those years, and now I don't think I am. It's not a nice feeling. And the how not to be a professional darts player is when basically before a major final in Vegas, when I was playing Phil Taylor, I went on a 48-hour gambling and drinks bender, and I literally didn't sleep for 48 hours, and it was, look, there are things that I've done. Am I ashamed of? No, I'm not ashamed of them. I'm slightly regretful, and as Scott Rand once said, the former semi-finalist in the Players' Championship back in, I think it's 2011, might have been 12. regret is a wasted emotion. But I can't help thinking that what might have been if I took the game a little bit more seriously. But with in the book as well, I go on about the pros of today and what they've got to watch out for. They've got to look after themselves. They've got to look after their money. Sorry if you can hear anything in the background. It's Sherlock and Watson having some kind of play fight. Yeah, and they've got to look after their business, and it is a business now. And I wish I'd have realised that just a little bit more clearer back in the day, because I really feel that I let a few things pass, and maybe if I was as clued up now about the whole sport, about my whole game, and look, I'm grown up now, and I'm not as drunk as often, so things are different. But yeah, there's a few things in there that I maybe could have done differently.
Well, I'm sure some of our listeners will remember your other book that you brought out, Hawaii 501 Life as a Darts Pro. I want to say around 2004, 2005 time. I think it's a diary style thing. Is this a little bit similar to that? There's going to be some similar stuff in it, or is there going to be a lot of different stuff in this one?
No, it's just it's all different. It's basically, there might be kind of the odd one or two sentences of overlap because they're stories from back in the day, but this is not all about me. This book is about what it's like to be a darts player, what's tough about it, what's great about it. Look, there's a lot of players that are earning 100, 200 grand in one hit, and that's the upside. The downside is that they've got to look after that. The downside is that they've, like Adrian Lewis once famously said, most of this is going to the tax man after he won the World Championship. There's lessons to be learned, and the fact that I was at the top of the game when I was 35, 36 years of age. I was in Premier Leagues. I was in World Championship semi-finals. I was in the latter stages of most events, and 2 years later, that was it. I was gone. I mentioned the destruction that Mumps calls me. I've never been the same since. That aggression on the dartboard went. But there's so many lessons that I hope that players can learn through my mistakes of how not to be a professional darts player. And if any read it and think, do you know what, he's got this right here, it's kind of a look behind the scenes as well. People think it's glamorous. You get on a plane and you're treated like absolute superstars. That's not always the case. You go to a hotel, but it's a lot. You know that the rigmarole of travelling is kind of can be really tough mentally, especially when you're losing week in, week out. So there's a lot of that in the book, but it's not all about me. I don't want to put people off.
Lastly, before we let you go, obviously the UK, we're hoping to come out of this lockdown. The things are opening up again. What are you most looking forward to about the rest of 2021?
Do you know what? Obviously, from a darting point of view, is the fans and just that normality, just that, that noise. You've been to enough darts events now where you get that noise, you get that din. It may not be a specific noise, but it's just the hubbub of a few thousand people. I look forward to that kind of noise. I look forward to the players kind of in an environment at the match play where they're sweating because it means so much. But do you know what? In day-to-day life, I just want to sit in a beer garden, drinking a Negroni with Sherlock and Watson and Mrs. M, thinking this is how life should be lived. This is what we need to do. We all need different things in life, but I just want to feel free. And I hope everyone else out there gets back what they've missed. And whether that's freedom, whether that's going back to work or not going back to work, whatever they're trying to achieve in life, I hope they get it right mentally, and I hope they achieve it.
Well said. Well, fingers crossed we'll be there soon, and wish you all the best with the new book, Wayne. Hope it goes well, and best of luck with the final week of the Premier League and what else comes for the rest of the year.
Yeah, thanks, Lau. It's out on May the 20th, by the way. You can order it from Amazon for £20, or if you want to sign one, go to Hawaii501.com for a signed one. Come on now, go on, you can do it. Thanks, Lau.
Thanks again to Wayne for joining us now away from the main PDC tour. The PDC have put out an update since we last spoke on the Challenge Tour and the Development Tour for this year. It's going to be split into UK and Europe. We're going to get 2 3-day blocks of 6 events later on this year. What were your thoughts on the announcement?
I think it was the right call. One, those needed to get scheduled at some point. The players were, the Challenge Tour players, there was a lot of uncertainty this year, but there was still the promise that there would be something, and that needed to get scheduled, and obviously same for Development Tour. So at some point it needed to go out. We now have some level of clarity, but the one thing we still don't know is what international travel would be like. And there's no perfect solution, but to at least create these 2 different hubs, I think makes sense, because it allows people to at least start to plan and start to figure out, and allows the British players, and doesn't affect Gary Anderson, but I'm sure he has an opinion on it. It allows British players to not have to go to mainland Europe, where, at least for most of mainland Europe, where things are a little bit more hectic than they are in Britain right now. And allows the players in Europe to at least start to plan for something and know that they don't have to go to Britain, where maybe things will have shifted and be the other way around in a few months. We just don't know. We know that things overall are getting better, but things aren't perfect and won't be perfect for some time. And I think this just makes sense. And like for the Pro Tour events, we need to make sure that players don't have to travel. 1, to cut down on cost, but 2, to cut down on logistics during the COVID world. And to get 6 events in as opposed to 4 makes sense. I think 8 probably would have been too much, although maybe that would have been the right way to go about it. I don't know. Maybe the money's not there to put on 8 events each time. That is a lot to do in 4 days. So 6 might be a good compromise, more than the 4 that's normal. And that way you can get 12 events in just 2 weeks. I don't have any real complaints about this. This seems to be the right decision. And splitting it up as a 1-year thing makes sense. Hopefully we get, maybe I missed the announcement about the World Championships, at least for the Challenge Tour. Hopefully this means that 1 spot comes from the European set and 1 comes from the UK set, not that 2 come from a combined order of merit, because that just wouldn't make sense. And same for tour cards. I should have looked to see if that was announced, but I don't recall having seen that. But hopefully we get clarity on that going forward.
Well, you're going to get clarity on that right now, because I have read the announcement, and the player that finishes top on each of the order of merits will get a 2-year tour card, and they will get a spot in the World Championship, which is obviously great news for the players involved. And I guess for us, really, we're following the darts. It'll be good to know what the players think of this announcement. I think it is massive for the players that are based in Europe or did go to the European Q School, because there's a lot more opportunities for them, isn't it? And especially during this time when we are holding back on travelling at the moment. And you look back to the history, particularly the Challenge Tour. I don't think they've ever played a Challenge Tour outside of the UK before. I know the Development Tour, there's been that weekend in Germany that's been on there for a little while now, maybe 4 or 5 years, but I don't think the Challenge Tour's ever moved out of the UK. So you're looking at players that are maybe younger that would be playing Development Tour and Challenge Tour this year, the likes of maybe Rusty Jake Rodriguez, Sebastian Białecki. They're going to get a chance to play European Challenge Tour. The European Development Tour won't have to come to the UK. And got to be said as well, you're not going to be playing any of them players that would have played the UK Q School. I know both the fields are going to be difficult, but there's going to be less players involved when you split it between the UK and Europe. So I think it's a big opportunity for these players really to pick up a lot of prize money, get a lot of experience playing in these PDC competitions, and of course the big carrot at the end of it, get that tour card and get a spot at the World Championships. 6 events across the 3 days, I think, is quite a lot for the players, especially if they've not played too much. And we know how grueling the Challenge Tour weekends have been. We've spoke to a few players in the past about it, so that's going to be something that the players have got to deal with. But on the other side of things, you look back to last year, we finished off the Challenge Tour with the 6 events in the 3 days. They did eventually manage to get another weekend of events in, and Dave Evans didn't have a very good first day, pulled it out of the bag the last couple of days and managed to finish top and get the tour card and get the spot at the World Championships. So I think it's big for a lot of players. Good to get these dates in the diary, and fingers crossed. I think the first one is start of July, so still a little way to go, but hopefully the restrictions will have eased a little bit then, and we'll see the players that want to be in these events be able to go to them. I think that's the main thing as well.
Now we move on to our last guests of the week, and that, of course, will be with Jeff Smith, the silencer, and our producer, Hannah.
I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Canada's #1, Jeff Smith. Thanks for the time, Jeff. How you doing?
Not too bad, Alex. How you been? Nice to be back on the show again.
Thanks for the time. And when we last had you on the show, way back in February 2020, you just made a final on the Pro Tour. 5 or 6 weeks later, the pandemic really takes over. How were those 4 months off for you?
Yeah, it's been kind of a nightmare tour card year, really, for just about any player that's got one, especially one that has to travel like I do. But you know what I mean? I was off to the races, everything was going great, and then all of a sudden it's been just one restriction after another. But happy to say we're still plugging away and moving up the rankings, so it's been not bad considering.
Well, during that first lockdown, there was some positive news. You signed a 4-year contract extension with Wayne Mardle. Just how much of a help have they been for you?
Yeah, there's, like I said, Wayne Mardle is one of the top manufacturers that have been for as far as I can remember. They've been awesome to me, awesome to deal with, and if it wasn't for them financially and the support that they give me with equipment, then there's no chance I'd be doing what I'm doing. So hats off, and I appreciate everything that they do for me.
Well, the PDC Tour in person resumed with the Summer Series in July last year at a semi-final for you on one of the days, and after you tweeted, starting to believe. So how big were those 5 days for you after that long break to come back and get some results?
Yeah, it's like I said, it's been very difficult times because most of our dart scene over here has been pretty well right to a halt. So there's no practice time in between for as far as real match play. So anything you do, it's on your own board at home, and it's difficult to prepare when you're playing at that level to come in without game preparation. So every day you just kind of have to plug away. Use the first couple of days to get acclimated back to being where you are, and just keep improving as you go on. So it's not been terrible.
Fast forward a few months and you're back in the PDC World Cup, the first time since 2013 when you were with John Park. This time you're with Matt Campbell representing Canada, and you both impressed in a run to the quarterfinals. What were your reflections on that weekend in Austria?
Yeah, Matt was absolutely fantastic to play with. You know what I mean? He's such a laid-back guy, but he likes to win at the same time, and you can tell that in his throw. He's very aggressive, and but in a laid-back kind of way. So it makes it easier to team with him for sure. You know what I mean? I don't think there was one moment that either one of us didn't believe that we couldn't win it. So, and you need that to make a successful bid if you're going to attempt to win that tournament.
Sticking with Matt as well, we had a thriller against Scott Waits shortly after that at the World Championship, but unfortunately missed out on a tour card at Q School. Have you spoke with Matt since then?
Yeah, I stay in constant contact with him. He's also in our management company through ZWA Sports Management. So, you know what I mean? Just try to keep his spirits up and to plug on. I think he kind of psyched himself out when it came to getting the tour card. Again, he brand new to all the restrictions that we were going through, and it's a different way of life, and you have to be able to overcome and adapt. And I think he'll be fine going into it next year.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. Back to you, a big decision that you made before the end of the year to pull out of the Players' Championship finals a few weeks after that World Cup. Did you feel it was important to come into the World Championships fully refreshed and not off the back of another quarantine?
Yeah, it was more under restrictions than anything. I was told by my Canadian government that I could come home and be able to get back on a plane and head back over, and that wasn't the case. So unfortunately, it's eliminated 2,500 off my rankings minimum. But you know what I mean? It is what it is. It's just we're in COVID restrictions, and new stuff's going to be coming at you at all times. So just going to have to put that one behind me and hopefully qualify for the next. And like I said, so far we're in the hunt, and hopefully we'll continue to do so.
Let's look back at your World Championship. You had a great win on the opening night against Keane Barry, and it looked like you were going to get past the seed Chris Dobie. The next day he comes back to win in a high quality game. What did you take away from your Ali Pali campaign?
Yeah, I knew I was in tough against both opponents. Like I said, I wasn't even anticipating Chris until I was able to deal with Keane, because he's such a good talent and a real nice young fella too. But you know what I mean? Chris, I was not playing my best, but I found myself in a winning position, and I thought, here's your chance. And I did improve my game, but unfortunately he went his level of play just went right through the roof, and I did well to hang with him, and I had my chances, but like I said, he just showed the quality that he has. But yeah, I'll take a second round for the first time in the World Championships, and hopefully we'll improve on that this year.
Definitely. Well, from following you on Twitter myself, and I know a lot of our listeners, they tip their hat to you, because living in Canada and the travel back and forth for the events is one thing, but during this pandemic there's been tests, hotels, quarantines, and a lot of the England-based players, they are experiencing it after the last Super Series we had in Germany with the quarantine. But how tough has it been for you doing it every single time?
Yeah, the travel is what it is. I've been willing to do that all the way through, but it's the sheer expense of it, and I've talked to my manager and stuff about this. And other players don't face the restrictions and stuff that I have to deal with when I come back. I have to go into a federal quarantine camp in either Montreal or Toronto, and it's at my own expense. So you're talking anywhere from $1,100 to $1,500 Canadian to stay there, and then my provincial government through an added quarantine on. So as soon as I come out of that quarantine, I go right into a provincial one at the cost of $1,400. So it takes a lot of your work that you've done over in the UK and Europe out of the equation, because you know what I mean. I know before I even step to the line that I've got to win probably 7 or 8 rounds to even break even. So you know what I mean. It is what it is, but hopefully these things are going to change eventually once the vaccines and stuff are all out, and hopefully the restrictions will go along with it.
Yeah, fingers crossed for that. And what has kept you going during these times, and when the restrictions they've changed or another expense has been thrown your way, how have you kept that determination to still be at the events and competing?
Yeah, like I said, the last one here, I was just in Germany, and it changed while I was in the air. I landed, found out that I was going to have to go through a provincial quarantine, and you're not prepared for it. You try to pool all your resources together to be able to get from one to the next one. And then to find out that I was going to get done with another $1,600 bill, and it affected my play the first 2 days. I wasn't very good. I played on stream, I think, against Kevin McDine, but I played terrible, and like I said, almost squeaked the win out, but it wasn't good enough. The last 2 days, I just said to heck with it. I got nothing to lose now. There's nothing I can do to change it, so just get back to playing darts. And fortunately enough, I was able to bring my level of play up. So got a great game with Michael Smith, but came out after the second round. That was the end of my tournament, and so here I am back in quarantine and eagerly waiting for the next chance.
Well, you mentioned that last Super Series, you did move into the top 64 during those 4 days. We're still in May, but if you were to keep your tour card at the end of the year, where would that rank for you in your achievements in the game?
Yeah, obviously once getting your tour card is not easy by any stretch. Keeping it also is not easy, but limitations on how many tournaments and stuff that we've been able to do, and missing out on the Players' Championships. I've done well to hang in where I am, so I just need to finish up strong, and hopefully we'll just maintain that 64 this year and not have to deal with Q school.
And you're flying the flag for Canada. We've now got this year another North American on the tour, Danny Baggish from America. How good is it to have a tour card holder from Canada and now the US to help grow the game in North America?
Yeah, it's definitely necessary. Like I said, Danny's a great player. So is Matt. You got Danny Lobby. There's loads of players that are more than capable. You got John Bard, a 3-time world champion that's sitting home. You know what I mean? We're blessed to have a lot of great players in this area. So to have the exposure for North America, I think is more than anything the most important part. Having Danny play on tour, get on TV, get some wins, get the public behind him, and the sponsorship comes along with it. So tournaments like the US Masters that we haven't been able to play the last couple of years, it's only going to benefit us to get us in there.
Yeah, we're looking forward to that when it comes around. And the next event for you, that will be the next Super Series in June, 5 or so weeks' time, another one in July after that. So what are the goals for you for the rest of this season? Have you got your eye on a potential World Match Play World Grand Prix spot, or are you looking a little bit further ahead than that?
Yeah, I never look any further ahead than the next tournament that I have in front of me. So when it comes down to it, it's going to be the next Players' Championship, Event 1, and then I'll take it. The next day it'll be Event 2, and I'll just take it as it comes. So every day is a different day, and you can be a superstar one day and a bum the next. So you just got to make sure you put your head down and be prepared to play at all times.
Definitely. Well, before I let you go, I've got to mention the walk-on song as well. Bryan Adams' Summer of '69. I first heard it at the World Series finals last year and nominated it as my walk-on song of last year in our awards that we did. Is that song here to stay for a while?
It is. Normally I was a big fan of the Tragically Hip with New Orleans is Sinking, but with copyright issues and stuff, it was difficult to get the song that I wanted. So it was a no-brainer, really. Bryan Adams being Canadian, and I think the crowds really took to it well. So it's definitely it's here to stay, and hopefully going to be around for a long time.
Glad to. Hopefully we'll hear it a few times this year. Jeff, we appreciate your time. Keep up the great work that you're doing, and wish you all the best for the rest of this year.
All right. Thank you very much, Alex. Appreciate you having me on the show again.
Wow, guys, what achievement. 200 episodes, a long way back when I was the first one, wasn't it? Hey, just want to wish you all good luck and carry on doing what you're doing. It's been great.
I am joined today by our producer, Hanna. Hanna, how are you?
I'm doing okay, recovering off the second COVID shot, but we're almost there, and yay for immunity.
Yeah, no kidding. I remember my second shot, and I didn't get out of bed for a day. We thank you for getting out of bed and spending some time for our episode 200. Not that you haven't gotten out of bed and spent so much time helping us out over the last couple years as our producer, which we greatly appreciate, as well as occasionally as a co-host on the show. So let's, though, talk about the last 2 years in darts. You came aboard, I think, just before our 100th episode in 2019. So you've been here for the entire second 100 and part of the first 100. What, though, has most struck you about darts over the last couple years since the start of 2019?
I think in terms of darts, what has happened is, I think, a couple of things. Obviously, coronavirus has caused us to view all sports in a new light and what can they do. And obviously, darts being as it is, it's managed to adapt really well to home series and things like that. And so it's been one of the few things that can adapt in such a way in such unusual circumstances. But also we've seen, and I know it's been commentated by many people before, but kind of a falling of giants, as it were. Not to say that there aren't any big players in the game, but those people who were big players and had the lock on the 100-plus averages no longer have that special vibe because it seems almost like out of nowhere. So many people have a lock on those 100-plus averages. So you still have MVG dominating, but he's not dominating the way that he used to. And that's not necessarily even because of any massive dip in form, although we have seen that with him according to some games, but just the overall, Dimitri Vandenberg can throw hundreds for days. Jose de Souza can throw hundreds for days. Just anybody that you can pick out of a hat on the right day, Aaron Beeney can get a 100 average. So it's just the standard is rising as it has continued. And instead of rising and having superstars emerge and solidify themselves where you would say, oh, those are the best 10 players, so that equals the Premier League for me. It's really gotten cloudy in that on the right day, you have 10, 20, 25 people who are all in contention for making really big moves. And so it's a really exciting time because you can't just say, oh, the bookie's favorite's going to be for sure Michael, or for sure James Wade, or for sure any of those people. You wouldn't want to rule them out, especially if you're a bookie, but it's not as easy or as put together as it seemed to be. There is not that big run of form. There is not that superstardom. And I think that on a whole, that has really opened up darts to a good place where it seems like it could be anybody's. Because in reality, it should have always been something where it could have been anybody's. And I just think we'll see more and more people try it, and that'll spread it further. And so I think the last 2 years have really opened it up on a grand scale. And even with coronavirus, not even be able to fully slow it down. I think it's in a good place and it's just going to get better.
Yeah, and definitely, we saw at the World Match Play just how high the quality was fresh out of one of the first events back from the pandemic. Now, you mentioned quite a few players there. We haven't had Michael Van Gerwen on, but we've had Jose de Sousa, we've had Dimitri Vandenberg, we've had Aaron Beeney all on over the last 100 episodes, and plenty more. And we had James Wade on in the first 100 episodes. So we've had almost everyone on that you mentioned. But who would you say your favorite guests from the first 200 episodes that we've had on?
It's hard to pick. There's a few that I think will be favorites. Just, I guess you have to break it down into different categories, as it were. I like the Legend series. We were thinking about doing something, and I thought, everybody's talking about calling old people in care homes and reaching out to people that maybe don't hear from people. And I thought, this seems like a really good time if we have the time, effort, and energy. And bless, Alex did have the time, effort, and energy to reach out to some of those legends and get their story and get those takes before people, thought to maybe get a hold of them. So that series as a whole, especially with Dave Clark on his episode is fantastic. There are the people who, for one reason or another, usually tied to you, Burton, who just love answering the phone when we call. And those people are fun because you like people who are enthusiastic to hear from you. Lorraine Winstanley loves you madly. Glenn Durant, just people that are excited to speak with us is always a lot of fun. And then I think, besides players, I think heads of different boards and things like that, just learning where the darts game is going elsewhere in the world is a big thing. And so there's so much to be gathered from everybody, and there's been a lot. There's, even if I open up something and I go, oh, I don't know necessarily who this person is, they've got a unique take, they've got an understanding, this is what's happening in Hungarian darts, this is what's happening in Asian darts. So it's hard to pick out just one or two favorites. I mean, in the last few years, just based on where life takes us, I think John Gwynn's a really good one. He's got a wealth of knowledge not only about darts, but soccer and cricket, so he will talk your ear off, and it's always pleasant to hear from him. It's just been a lot of fun. There's nobody that stands out to me particularly as unpleasant. I mean, how great was it to have even a few minutes with Peter Wright after he won his Worlds? So you could make an argument for so many people. I think we're just really lucky to have the access that we've got, thanks to the PDC and thanks to the WDF and thanks to the now defunct BDO, to have this access to people. And then thanks to the various boards, Championship Darts, Asian Darts, etc., for making their arrangements that we could speak with them and have such access so that we could learn. And it's been wild, the access that we've been given for a group of people sat in their homes. It really has, but it's been a good wild.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Lorraine Winstanley. I forgot to mention her when I was listing my favorite interviews. Granted, it was back at the end of season 1. We had about a 10-minute interview with her and then spent another 20 minutes just talking about darts with her right after the interview, after I stopped pressing record. But I think that transitions to the next question. You went, and you also mentioned the BDO Worlds there. You went to the last BDO Worlds in 2020 for us, and you interviewed almost every lady in the field, including Lorraine, who was participating in the World Championships that year. What are your memories, though, of that 2020 BDO World Championships and being there covering the event for us?
I remember a lot of it, considering not much happened between that and me becoming permanently work from home and not doing very much with things, obviously. Most of the last year and a half has just been buried in work stuff. So it was nice. It's, the venue was nice. I know there was criticism with that, but I think the criticism is less the venue and more perhaps the people putting on the event, as it were. Because it was a nice venue. It's not terribly far from my house. It was a nice area for darts players to warm up and kind of socialize together. A few people had used it as kind of, especially in the women's game, had used it as like a bit of a holiday, like Tori Q-ish. During that time, she was supposed to go back after she got knocked out, and she decided that she'd prefer to hang out. And given that half of Australia was on fire, who could blame her really for wanting to stick around? So it was a lot of fun, and I was surprised that as many people were willing to give me their time, not only because it was a live event, of which many players that I interviewed were still in the process of playing said event, but also I'm not a great interviewer with not a lot of experience. So just accessing things where I get kind of facial blindness when I get panicked and stuff. So I approach somebody with confidence and go, this is who I'm going to ask, and then walk up and go, I don't even fully remember who you are right now. My brain has fallen out of my head. But all of the women were fantastic that we got to interview, and the few that I didn't get to interview, that is entirely on me. Some people, I got a migraine and went late and ended up missing one of my interviews, which was unfortunately timed. Everybody was super nice. We even talked with Carrie Crompton. Everybody was super sweet and super nice. And they're trying to, reach out and do new things on the back of Fallon's stuff. Obviously, we want to talk about where Fallon is and does that open any doors. And it might have opened more doors, obviously, if Corona hadn't smacked everybody down a month later. But we still saw the PDC Women's Series that we hadn't seen before. And that could potentially open the door to more PDC Women's Series. And then, of course, Lisa won her tour card. So this narrative of advancement didn't go in the way that anybody would have thought, but it still progressed in a way that I think is good for women's darts. And then people, as the BDO kind of fell apart, obviously the WTF has said there'll be rules for women in the women's game, and Laura Turner started her efforts in highlighting the women's game for darts as well. We spoke with Matt Porter about the women's darts with PDC, and I'm just hoping against all hope that that continues to be an event there, because it'd really be a shame if we were to lose the women's game because the BDO fell apart. And I know that that's not the plan of the WDF, and I trust that. But historically, across other sports, if there's a time of financial hardship or a time where things are falling apart, it seems like the first to get cut is women's and amateur initiatives, or especially amateur women's initiatives. So I trust the WDF and Richard Ashdown and them will support the ladies' game and will go forward. And I trust that it's got a big future ahead of it. But at a time when it was the BDO might be dissolving and we don't know if anybody's going to pick up the mantle, it was a weird time. So it feels more stable now despite Corona, and fingers crossed it continues to go that way, because it could have gone so much worse and it could have gone so much better. So we'll see what the future holds.
Well, hopefully the future holds in at least another 200 episodes of the show, and another 200 episodes with you along with us as our producer and occasional guest host. Thank you so much for everything you've done for us and for taking some time while recovering from the vaccine to speak with us today.
Thank you, guys. It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks to Jeff and Hanna for joining us. And of course, thanks to Hanna for everything she's done over the last few years for this show. Now we'll finish up with a couple listener questions. First one comes from Double Trouble Drinks. Who have we not had on the show that we've liked to, and who is the worst guest we've had on?
Like I said earlier at the start of the show, we've been lucky to speak to a lot of different guests. Coach Stompy was on my list for Tom and managed to get a chat with him. And I know reading your mind, in Mark Walsh is going to be quite high up on your list. I think he's probably at the top of my list now because I want to get him on just so you can have a chat. A little lower down on the list, I'll go with Phil Taylor, actually, because successful player of all time, and we've got the World Seniors Champion starting up next year. Hopefully, maybe he'll do a bit of media time with that and he'll be able to fit us in for a chat. That would be great to finally get a one-on-one with him. I did meet him briefly a few years ago now at the Target launch. Had a little chat with him, but to get him on the show would be good. Michael Van Gogh as well. We've never had him on. Again, one of the most successful players in the history of darts. Hopefully we'll get him on one day for a chat, would be nice. The second part, hard to say really, because we do appreciate everyone that gives up the time, and even maybe English isn't their first language. We've had a few of them on over the years, and more often than not, their English has been perfectly fine. We've managed to understand them. Our listeners have been able to understand them, so we do like them. I wouldn't say worst guest, but probably Paul out with Jeff Smith, funnily enough, who you've just heard from, and ironically, his signal was a lot better in Canada than it was in the UK when we spoke to him last time. We even got a 3-star review on iTunes for how bad the quality was for that interview. So hopefully that listener listened to this week's show, and maybe we'll up it to 4 stars because the quality was a bit better for that one. So I'm looking forward to that review being changed.
Although, ironically, we did have technical difficulties with the connection on one of the interviews this week, but it was your line in the Barry Hearn one. But hopefully we're able to make that sound good. I do have to start the same place that you did for who we haven't fully had on. We had a short interview with Mark Walsh, courtesy of Matthew Kiernan a few years ago, but we haven't had him on properly. It's his right not to be on the show. He's semi-retired. He's not on the tour, but we would love to have him on if he's willing to give some time. I did forget when I was going through my favorite interviews for episodes 101 through 200. Another one from Matthew Kernan during that time frame was with Mandy Solomons, the former women's number one 4-time world master. We got an extended interview courtesy of Matthew with her from one of the Opens a couple years ago. And I thought that was just fantastic. And since then, she's actually played a little bit. And who knows, maybe she'll win through to the World Championships one of these days. And we'll have to get her back on. But who else haven't we had? Some of the players who don't speak English that we just can't get on, but would love to otherwise. Christopher Tajski doesn't like speaking English unless he can see the person, so we haven't been able to get him on. Cristo Reyes doesn't speak much English, hasn't been playing much recently, but we'd still love to get him on because we know how good he is when he's at his top gear. So there's a few players like that. At some point, we would like to get on if the situation allows us to. And Mensur Suljovic was a similar player, but we did finally get him on near the end of last year. But I think that's where I'll go. Some of those players who don't speak English or don't speak English as a first language would love to get him on if the situation could ever work, even if it's with a translator. I'm not going to answer the second half of the question, who's the worst guest we've had on. As Alex said, I agree. We're just thankful that the players give us any time that they have.
Last of our questions then, and it comes from John Thompson, who says, which Stoke-based player should we be more concerned about, Adrian Lewis or Ian White?
That's a really interesting question. And we've talked a lot more about Adrian Lewis and the struggles he's had, although not as much as we've talked about some other players' struggles, because it's been now 4 years since he was in the Premier League, so he sometimes slips off our mind. But there's a big case to be made that there's a lot to worry about when he's currently in none of the televised events outside the World Championships. But he's still only in his mid-30s. This is a drop in form, but there's no reason to think he can't get back. We know that he is, even though it's been a while since we've seen it, he's still a top 16 player if he finds his game. Ian White, though, is much older than that. Not old per se, but he's older than mid-30s. And the amount of time Ian White has left at the top of the game we would think, is more limited. And he was so close to that breakthrough a year and a half ago, but it didn't come. It sort of came. He made the semifinals of a major televised event, but he didn't get through to that final, and he didn't get through to the Premier League when he was so close, winning all those European Tour events. And he hit a bit of a brick last year and has fallen back this year. And we've seen when players drop out of the top 16 how quickly they can fall. It's happening to Adrian Lewis right now as well. But it could happen to Ian White because he's just not getting the results he once was in the Pro Tour events either. And that's where it's concerning. And we'll see. There's still time for him to find his game and get back to those seeded top 16 in the world, top 16 in the Pro Tour. But it is definitely concerning. So I'll say Ian White. But I think there's a serious argument to be made both ways on this. And not a question that I think we should have thought about before, but hadn't.
He's, of course, a two-time world champion. He's won other big titles. He's been a Premier League player for a long time. And he's just continued to drop, hasn't he? I think he's now 31st on the order of merit. And as things stand, he's not going to match play, not going to be in any of the big TV events for the rest of the year. We look back to the start of the year. He had a good couple of wins in the Masters. He only got into that event because they extended the field from 16 to 24. But he had a good couple of wins that weekend and did a interview with Target last month as well. He just extended his contract with them, and he said it's been difficult and the events are so separated. Okay, you get 4 events in 4 days, but after that, for a lot of the players, it's been long breaks between events, and he's one of the players that has struggled with that. He's had a bad result, and he's had to dwell on that for longer than he usually would. Usually you'd have a tournament one weekend, you'd go straight into another one the following weekend, and we've seen he's been one of the players that has really struggled in recent times. Ian White as well, and we see now the success that he had on the European Tour 2 years ago, those 4 finals in a row, 2 titles as well, starting to drop off the order of merit. He is dropping down the rankings, and his floor form as well, the results. He had a quarter final and a semi-final that first Super Series. Since then, 6 of the next 9. He's gone out in the first round, the other 3 he's gone out in the second round. He's just not been able to put results together, and there, like you say, there is a bit of a gap in terms of age, but as we know with darts, it doesn't matter what age you are, what you've done in the game before, you've got to keep doing it. And at the moment, these two aren't. So I think, both of them are in a bit of trouble.
Anything else for this week?
Got to say, big thank you to all of our listeners. If you've listened from episode 1, episode 100, if this is the first episode that you've listened to, we really appreciate you guys taking the time out to listen to us every week. And everyone that we've had on the show as a guest, anyone that's helped us with setting up interviews or helping us with anything during the show, worn our stickers on the stage in some of the TV events. I know a few of our players, Dave Parletti, Kirsty Hutchinson, have done that for us, which we're really grateful for. So big thank you to all of them. Big thank you to our producer, Hannah, Matthew Kiernan, who always provides us with interviews whenever we've asked or whenever he's been to an event, he's helped out. Low Six as well, who've been on board for a year now as our sponsor. They present this show. We'll chat a bit more about them next week when we do our Premier League picks, but we are really grateful for their support. So thank you to all of them. Most important of all, though, big thank you to my co-host Burton for sticking with us during this show, during the good and the bad times. It's been much appreciated, and I've enjoyed chatting to you every single time.
Aww. I guess I should say most thanks to you as well. You've actually beaten everyone once in the Premier League pick'em, so you don't need any thanks. No, but thank you to everyone. And most thanks, obviously, to you, to our producer Hannah, and to Matthew for helping out in the show and making the show what it is over the past 200 episodes, and for the next 200 episodes as well. But thanks to everyone who's listened to one episode, to all 200, to just our interviews with Barry Hearn when we've had him on, whatever your level of listening. Thank you. Thanks to all our guests, to our sponsors, to everyone who just downloads the episode, like my former flatmate who has never listened to it but has downloaded it as he told us to increase our count. I don't think many people do that, but he has done that. But 200 episodes. I can't believe we made it this far. And I guess now it's time to start planning for episode 201. What will be on that episode? Well, you'll just have to hang tight and find out.
You are listening to the weekly Dartscast. 1 hour 90.
Players, can I have everybody's attention, please?
I'm delighted to say I'm joined by the newly crowned PDC World Champion, Peter Wright. Peter, how you doing?
That sounds good, doesn't it? Hey, I'm happy. Yeah, just a little bit tired, but still on a high. I think I'll be on a high for about a week.
Because I'm a darts anorak, aren't I? I mean, I'm not as bad as DeWitt. I mean, he's a proper darts anorak, but I am, my racings are finished before DeWitt. Sadly, I hooked in my hand. I am a sad bastard. I can't help it. I love this game. I love this sport.
All right, so Mikuru, you're two-time ladies champion. I know you've answered this question several times already, but still, how does it feel?
I can believe it.
You got it, though. Number one human, quest still on?
Uh-huh.
Game, shot, on the 2020 video World Professional Darts Champion, Wayne Mardle.
They can never take this from me and world champion. They can never take it off them. It is what it is, though.
And just finally, a message for our host, Burton DeWitt, who's a big fan of yours.
Hello, Burton. You all right, mate? Hope to see you soon. I love you to bits.
Well, the pain that came after my win over Phil Taylor in 208 in Germany, because I was 2-0 down in sets, and I still managed to beat him 4-2 in sets. And that's when I had that feeling which you see in the Karate Kid movie. At the last moment when he was kicked down, he came up, he made the crate.
But I guess that's it for this week. Until next week, though, I am Burton DeWitt alongside Alex Moss. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.